I find what it is I should know. It's just a matter of time for you reawaken your mind. Oh, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is true, yeah. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. Since 2011, House of Reawakening Minds has existed to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, we're pleased once again to present our National Grand Sheikh, Tarik Bey, as he presents Self-Governance is Required in Order to Know Thyself. Let us welcome him.
Islam. A couple weeks ago we went over some of the files that we're sharing for you. Actually, some of the notes on public notice having to do with fundamental elementary civic facts that all nationals and all citizens should be cognizant of, aware of, and totally, how would you say, schooled about. I'm going to hit a couple more and then go in support of our presentment tonight of self-governance. Now, in accord with the ancient Sabian Moorish culture and science, etc., and the principles of government that have been adopted over thousands of years among other nations coming from the old Moabite Canaanite peoples, pretty much expressed in what we know today as constitutional principles. Now, a lot of times when people look at constitution principles, they're usually, because of the way that most people have been taught, their mind immediately goes to the Constitution for the United States operating at North America. But the concept and the principles of that Constitution supersede the operations of constructed government operating at Northwest Africa, i.e. Morocco, i.e. North America, Northwest of Mexico, in contemporary times under the United States Corporation Company operatives who have been pretty much occupying Morocco for the last couple of hundred years under colonial operations and under the doctrine of discovery set forth by the popes of Rome, etc. And while the constitutional principles come from Muslim law, i.e., and more specifically, the Anasi Moors, the Anasi Confederation, sometimes referred to by the people as the Iqua Moors or the Iqua Confederation. So the Constitution for the United States is derived from the ancient Moabite Canaanite rules and laws. However, it must also be remembered that when we're talking Constitution, we're not just talking the written documents that you know as a Constitution. We're also talking about the 12 signs of the zodiac. You're talking about the numbers from 0 to 9. And you're talking about geometry, etc., and cosmology, astrology, which comprises the Constitution of the ancient Canaanite Moabite nation, in modern times known as the Moorish nation, which pretty much has been what you call occupied under the hybrid Germanic tribes for the last few hundred years. But I want to mention a few more of the facts that need to be known, civic facts, in order to give you a concept of change of frame of mind for most of the people, which is needed for the liberation of humanity from the dark side priesthood, who have been pretty much governing the planet for quite some time now. Keep in mind, it is not only the restoration, the need for the restoration of the culture and traditions of the ancient Moors among the Aboriginal peoples, relative to cosmology and the mathematical study of self and of nature, etc., which constitutes the culture, etc. But to understand the necessity for people to start intelligently and with knowledge and not with emotions governing themselves, due to the fact that there has been this misconception that the persons who have been operating government on the land at North America under the guise of the United States federal government, etc., being a de facto and foreign order, due to the fact that it has caused so much injury and suffering to and among the people. Therefore, it is more important, as transitions are made in both consciousness and knowledge among the common people, and particularly among the people of the land, that we be better prepared for the changes that are taking place and the changes which must take place here on Midgard Earth. So I want to make a couple of more notes, and I suggest that you take cognizance of these notes, and then we'll go even into more detail of our discussion tonight. Fact: the King of England financially backed both sides of the conflict in the American Revolutionary War. And for your reference, you will see the Treaty of Versailles, July the 16th of 1782, and the Treaty of Peace 8, Statute 80. And as we mentioned the couple of weeks ago, and in between, we've had some people call and some people contact me even, off the show in relationship to this one, which we had mentioned then. You cannot use the United States Constitution to defend yourself, because you are not a party to it. And for that, you see Paddleford Fay and Company versus the mayor and alderman of the city of Savannah, Georgia, 438, 520. Again, America is the name of a major continent among the 7 recognized continents. The United States Corporation doing business at North America is a British colony. The United States is a corporation. It is not a landmass. It existed before the Revolutionary War, and the British troops did not leave North America until 1796. That's a fact, and is more established information for you to recognize that the concepts that the people have in general, that these persons who they've been thinking was a legitimate Congress and Senate operating on the land, thinking that they were actually constitutional officers, but yet in their experiences discovering that these people were doing more things to harm the people, doing more things to unlawfully tax the people, doing more things to unlawfully and oppressively regulate the people, doing more things to force taxation on the people, force drugs on the people, force contracts on the people with private corporations, and force the people to pay taxes for them to send into so-called other countries under the guise of foreign aid, while they were actually setting up private personal funds for themselves in other political nation states under the guise of having authority under the Constitution when in fact they were not. They were actually operating as foreign agents and foreign operatives, and the so-called lobbyists have been and still are used as a cover for their criminality of stealing funds from the common people of America. That's both the nationals, i.e. the people of the land, and the U.S. corporate citizens who are members of their private foreign corporation operations, etc., and then sending it to other nations to the tune of billions, multiple billions of alleged dollars a year, and then claiming those debts to be on the backs of the people of the land, etc. And they have been getting away with it because people don't know that these operatives are actually criminals and that they're really trustees for the British colony. So the concepts that the people think that the so-called United States is an independent country was false and still is false. It's a British colony. That's a fact. Now, we know that the people have been going through a lot of pressure from the Whigmore Party split operatives known as the Conscience Whigs and the Cotton Whigs, commonly known in these contemporary times as the Republican Party and the Ku Klux Klan Democratic Party. That is specifically the Republican Party operating on the land at North America is the split off of the Whigmore Party, known as the Cotton Whigs, and the Ku Klux Klan Democracy Democrats is known as the Cotton Whigs. I apologize, and the Republican Party is the Conscience Whigs. And people need to know what they're really arguing about, because what they're really arguing about is really two-body politics of foreign operatives known as Zionists. They are, in fact, Zionists. It has nothing to do with what you like or what you do not like. And they have not been operating in the cares or the concerns of the people, but have been operating in cares and concerns of the Queen of England, answering to the Circle Church and the Chancery on Fleet Street, England, i.e. the Bar Association, and then answering to the Popes of Rome and the Bishoprics of Rome under the Treaty of Verona, etc., with the determined interest and determined mission to overthrow the Republic, which is why you always hear them saying, whether they're from the Conscience Whigs or from the Cotton Whigs, always saying, quote unquote, relative to themselves, quote unquote, our democracy. And that is the code word for the British colony trustees, etc., that these people are arguing over who they're going to vote for or not vote for, not knowing that these people are signed, and the fiction that these people's voices are heard or that they have free speech is all based in fraud.
A couple questions have come up. One question is from Ami. And the question is, both factions are Zionists?
Exactly. See, you know what? Take this in consideration and then ask that question again, because I want to give them something to think about. I'm not going to expand on this, but take this statement and analyze this and talk about this off the show. Our people have been arguing for generations to get off the plantation. Is that not true? Now that the Cotton Whigs have been using the so-called coronavirus as an excuse to cover up the fact that they have stolen all of the Social Security non-funds and all the retirement funds, and they've been stealing people's accounts through the bankers to cover up the fact that the stock market froze or crashed, that the credit windows of the world have frozen, and that the trade windows of the world have frozen, and to cover it up, they've been using this super duper, don't make any reports on the flu reports anymore, it's all corona, to cover up their criminality. So keep that in mind. So now the people have been thrown off the plantations, i.e. their jobs, long O, short O, job jobs. And the trick is to get them to beg for their jobs back. Now they're begging to get back on the plantation. Just take that in consideration. So we won't go deeper into that, but give a thought on that. Now, ask that question again.
The same question?
I just want to throw that in to give them something to think about. They want to get off the plantation. Now they're begging. The trap is for them to beg to get back on it. See, no one's talking about the restoration of their estate. You see the whole point? No one's talking about decolonization, which is really what their economic problem is. They're asking to get back on the plantation. See, they're making them suffer to get the people to ask to get back on the plantation so they can justify further corruption.
So the question was, both factions are Zionists?
Exactly. Keep this in mind. So write this down and do a little research, you all. The Whiggamore Party. And do some research on the convention, 1854, etc., to 1863, Knights of Columbus, Ku Klux Klan oath, etc., and Horace Greeley, the New York newspaper tycoon, and his association with the Whiggamore Party, and this convention of 1854 at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and also the split of the Whiggamore Party, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and the split being the Conscience Whigs, Republican Party, and the Cotton Whigs, i.e. the Ku Klux Klan Democratic Party, two sides of the same coin who have been taking over, surreptitiously and via misprision, i.e. with the missionary operations of overthrowing the republic, and thus under a color of authority and a color of law instituted de facto governance on the land under the guise of the United States Corporation Company being falsely taught as a country when it's actually a private human trafficking corporation. That's a fact.
Okay, I'm putting
All right. Was there another one?
What someone said, what about Trump?
Trump is better than all of them wrapped together. He's still a Zionist. Remember, I always say to people, and we've been saying this for the last couple of years, Donald John Trump has an assignment. And I suggest if anyone knows differently to give note to it for the public record. But this is the fact. Donald John Trump is assigned to clean up. Whether it was his intentions or not, I'm not arguing that. He's assigned to clean up much of the corruption that has contaminated the rogue state, corporate state that has been feigning as a country for these last couple hundred years, known as the United States, which is known by the nations of the world now as a rogue state who's been using military operations, biological warfare, financial warfare, genocide, assassination, murder, etc., to enforce their secret Treaty of Verona and other operations under the doctrine of discovery. And his job is to clean up some of it to prove worthy that the nations of the earth will continue in the future to trade with them. While the United States Corporation, through their Zionist order, has been controlling artificially with private commercial paper known as Federal Reserve notes, etc., from the Zionist order known as the Federal Reserve, set forth by Woodrow Wilson on Jekyll Island, 1913, etc. Although the operations were instituted in actuality earlier than that, that's their official admission. It is to His job is to clean up some of the mess, or they're not going to trade with them anymore. This is another reason why the trade windows of the world have frozen. Another reason why the credit windows of the world have frozen. This whole game that they've been playing politically as of late is a cover-up for their criminality. So to that point, Donald Trump has more honor than the rest, and I'm not saying that to defend him. I just know part of what his mission is. And I suggest if any of you think that I'm lying, you can have Donald Trump himself call us, and I bet you he won't deny what I just said. Even if they don't discuss it publicly, I'm telling you the facts, and that's what's known. That's a fact. And I suggest you pay attention more to what they do than what they say. However, they're still arguing over our estate. Now, that's the truth.
And there was a request for you to repeat the stare decisis case that said we don't use the Constitution.
Oh, yes.
To defend, yeah.
Now, here we go. Now, this is a point 17 on this list of factual information shared with you all. And each one of these issues, we could give you more support, but we give you law cases so that you can look them up yourself, because we already know that whenever we come on the air at the House of Reawakening Minds, we already know that certain alphabet soup organizations and foreign agencies always put trolls out, whether they look like us or whether they're otherwise hybrid Europeans. And so we give you law cases so you can research for yourself. Accept not what we say, go do some research. Here we go. Number 17. You cannot use the United States Constitution to defend yourself, because you are not is emphasized, not a party to it. Now, as a case law, you can see Paddleford, Fay, and Company versus the mayor and aldermen of the city of Savannah, 14, Georgia, 438 and 520. Now, if you want me to expand on that a little bit, I'll expand on it a little bit in 2 points. That's number one. When you look at this in relationship to the city, the mayor and aldermen of the city of Savannah, you need to know what that's saying, because that's a party to the matter, right? Now, the city of Savannah is not what you would call Savannah City, as you would see. So when you see the city of, or the state of Georgia, or state of Pennsylvania, or state of Delaware, every time you see that state of, you're dealing with the foreign corporate operatives of the Jesuit order, of the Zionists, who own the Federal Reserve and own the United States Corporation Company, colonies, etc., and has nothing whatsoever to do with the Constitution for the United States derived from Muslim law, as Barack H. Obama had stated, etc., earlier in the last part of his presidency for the corporation. And so the people don't know that the Constitution of the United States is not the Constitution for the United States, and they're not aware of the Organic Act of Congress of 1871, February the 2nd, when the trustees and board of directors, who have been claiming to be Congress and senators, came out of the closet but didn't tell the people that they actually overthrew the Constitution for the United States, i.e. the Republic, and instituted their democracy platform. And so the alteration of Constitution of the United States, by virtue of them tricking the people to be stock under the U.S. citizen clauses, declared the people to be stock, and said and held the position and still hold the position that the people have no constitutional rights whatsoever, can own no property whatsoever, cannot dispute any of the laws, rules, or orders set forth by the United States corporate company operatives, etc., and trustees. And thus, you cannot use the United States Constitution to defend yourself because you're not a party to it. On another point, consider this. If you're not the original people of the land, i.e. the American nationals, etc., from which the principles of that Constitution is derived from the honor honesty, and if you're not direct descendants of the so-called founding fathers that they talk about, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, etc., Thomas Jefferson, etc., in harmony with the treaties and the Constitution, you're not a party to it. And you cannot claim to be one of the brand systems set up by the German Dutch masters, such as Negro, black, and colored people and Indians, etc., and use that Constitution because you're not a party to it. The treaties and that Constitution comes from Moors and a few hybrid European sons under agreements of trade and commerce. This is why you see in the early days the Almoroccan flag, i.e. the red flag with the five-pointed green star, the continental flag, sometimes referred to as the treaty flag, i.e. the Bunker Hill flag, and you see a red flag with a green pine tree, cedar tree, in a white canton, and then you see the stars and stripes, which is a banner of amity and commerce, which is a trading banner, etc. If you're not coming under that or enforcing treaty and constitution, you're not a party to it, and if you're not a descendant, you're not a party to it. Therefore, you cannot use those agreements and those contracts as a defense. And this is, again, with why they do not teach the people civics, because they don't want the people to be obviously or become obviously, cognate of the fact that the persons who are really administrative operatives pretending to be judges, to recognize why they don't have constitutions posted on the doors of these so-called municipal courts, because they are not constitutional courts. They are not creatures of the constitutions, and the persons who are operating those venues are not Article 3 judges. They are indeed administrative executors under executive law, under corporate operations, and are indeed not judges whatsoever. And they don't want you to figure that out, and they don't want you to know that, while that also is established fact, and that's among the list that we're sharing with you, etc. And that's the basis upon which those multiple levels are the basis upon which you can't use that Constitution. And this is, again, why it's important for people to really study civics so they can recognize where they are in their position and status operating on their land, and also others who are operating on our land who claim to be U.S. citizens but are not harmonic with the Republic's Constitution, and wonder why they can't use that Constitution. They're not a party to it. All parties are specifically named and they must be identified. Same thing goes for reparations. Unfortunate truth, but it is. And we don't have to argue it, because every time you see the people keep trying to talk about reparations or restoration or anything like that, they're always what? Flatly ignored by the so-called representatives that they thought was their government.
Okay, Dominique Harris says not being a party to the Constitution from a legal standpoint makes sense.
Legal or factual standpoint, yes.
But it is a trust indenture.
We know that it is.
DEC, the Declaration of Independence form the trust of which you can place claim upon as progeny.
Oh, now you can say progeny, just like you can say heir, right? Mm-hmm. We can say progeny and we can say heir, right? Now, progeny of what nation state, what pedigree? See, because the parties specifically must be named, because that's the issue. As an example, let me give you an example. There's a treaty between the original legitimate creature officers for the United States Republic and Russia, as an example. If there's a controversy or an argument or any issue that must be addressed between the two so-called recognized nation states, if that's the case, and knowing that the United States is not, you would not see them saying America versus Russia, or Americans this or Americans that, or green people, or doesn't matter what color you are. You will have to name the political platform specifically in order to have a jurisdictional platform under a consular international venue to argue any issue, etc. If there's no treaty between any particular said nation states or political jurisdictions, therefore there would have to be a liaison of another nation state with which the identified parties have treaty, and that other nation state would therefore be a liaison between them, etc., if no treaty exists between them. Therefore, the principle that we're presenting is that all parties must be specifically named. You cannot designate just a status without the identified pedigree or nation state. It doesn't work.